Being flooded with insurance is an absolutely terrible, gut-wrenching experience to go through. Being flooded without insurance is unthinkable.
The worst flood we've had here was Storm Desmond in 2015, and that was quite dramatic, the amount of water that came in then. And we weren't prepared, we didn't get things moved out as quickly as we thought we would. It was quite a shock.
It feels like you've had an invader in your home that you've got no control over.
In fact, I come from Somerset, so I've lived through a lot of flooding. And before I became an MP, the huge flooding we had in 2012-13. So I know what it's like, and I know how heartbreaking it is for people.
People living at high risk of flooding either couldn't obtain home insurance at all, or if they could, it was at a very, very high cost.
Your home is annihilated by filthy, stenching floodwater. And people think floodwater may be blue, but it's brown.
Build Back Better is a necessary step forward by enabling homes to be put into a more resilient position, better protected against future flooding.
Environment Agency analysis shows that 5.2 million homes in England are at risk of flooding. But recent analysis bring that figure to 1 in every 4 homes is at risk of flooding.
The UK's 9% more rainfall last decade than the 4 decades before, and globally we now have 10 extreme weather events causing over $1.5 billion of damage every year, displacing 1.3 billion people and killing 1,000 people.
There are lots of different types of floods. Coastal flooding at our coasts, so overtopping, surge around the coastline, combined with river floods going out of their bank and flooding the floodplains. But also these summer rainstorms, this flash flooding from really intense rainfall. And we can see that in our cities where we get surface water flooding.
Yes, even people that live on hills can be flooded, as I've witnessed myself.
We often look at actually just the economic impact. So the 2015-2016 winter floods, it's estimated that the economic disruptive cost was about £1.6 billion.
We looked at huge interest and huge concern at what happened in Europe last summer with flooding, particularly given the number of people who sadly died. And we wanted to understand what would happen if that weather event happened in England. Our analysis shows that 62% of people living with flood risk are unaware that they're living with that risk.
We still see a large number of people who don't understand their risk.
Before we bought the property, we did know there was air flood risk, and I did speak to neighbours to find out how bad that was. We didn't expect it to be as dramatic as it is.
My home was flooded 6 times in the summer floods, and it was flash flooding. We didn't know back then we're in a flood risk area.
But it was 8 months we were out of the property for.
We actually ended up being out of the house for 9 months.
The average is 9 months, some people for 2 years.
We had to move twice. We lived in one rented house that then was sold, so we had to move again. You're lying in bed at night and it rains and you think, is this going to happen again? Whether it was going to happen again, when it was going to happen again.
What we saw was insurance premiums going up and excesses going up. And that started to make insurance unaffordable. So there needed to be action, and insurers and government worked together to find a way that they could ensure that insurance is affordable for people living at the highest risk of flooding.
The worst case scenario would be inaction. If the government don't take their responsibility to raise awareness about the challenges we're all going to face with climate change, if it's inaction from the insurance industry to not adapt their products and to offer information and help to their customers, and finally inaction from people up and down the country, from householders, if they don't make the changes and the adaptations to their homes that will be necessary in the future.
We know that current policies, current insurance policies, are much more focused on building back to the previous standards.
I think there's a cultural change that needs to happen with insurers in terms of what they're offering as a policy. This is definitely going to be an improvement to that policy that's going to benefit the customers. It's going to benefit them as an organisation.
Adaptation for me means, how do we change our homes?
Adapt plan and thrive.
So we can do all we can to combat climate change, but we also have to get used to adapting to it.
The single most important change is a attitudinal change. People need to become more aware.
So that where there is a flood, we can protect our homes against it.
Most people think that the Environment Agency or local authorities should stop flooding. It's not their responsibility, and it's something that I found out that actually I am the one that's responsible for protecting my home.
I think we all have a responsibility to prepare for climate change, and that involves making sure that your homes are flood resilient, which means that they can bounce back after a flood. We had solid floors downstairs all through except this room that we're in now, so we had that dug out and a concrete floor put in. Then we had it sealed, and then we had tiles put down and had those sealed as well. And we also had the plugs lifted higher as well, so we've got more time to actually have the electricity on before we have to turn it off in a flood, because the plugs are just out of the water level a little bit longer. When we have a flood warning now, we don't have as much furniture downstairs as we used to. We're really fortunate because we have friends that usually come down and help us. Two of us can lift up the electric piano on top of the dining table. The dining table is solid wood, so it can be cleaned up afterwards, it can be polished up afterwards. We have tested that. We did flood in February before the pandemic in 2020, and we were back in the house within 24 hours because we were able to brush the water out, disinfect it, and have the fire on and dry the place.
So think about what we can do to try and keep the water out of a home. For instance, a kite mark flood door or a barrier, or self-closing air bricks and sumps and pumps. And then build in recoverability. So if flood water does get in, we've got the waterproof plaster, waterproof flooring, waterproof kitchens, and surfaces up the wall, your boilers, your plug sockets up the wall. So if you flood, you can literally sweep it out, sanitise it, dry it, and carry on living there. It's really learning to live with water rather than worrying about total devastation.
Ways of keeping the water out, or trying to, could be things like aperture protection, flood barriers, non-return valves on the drainage. You can fit things like non-return valves to reduce the risk of sewer flooding. Things like self-closing air bricks that shut as the water level rises to reduce ingress into the property.
The challenges presented by climate change require radical collaboration between governments and businesses, between finance and between citizens, so that we can drive emissions down to zero as quickly as possible. And then they require innovation so that we change the way we think about infrastructure, so that we build it to be more resilient to the risks that we've already built into the future.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
Build back better.
It's a massive step change for insurers' businesses, because they're going to be offering different policies. We're moving from reinstating like for like to building back better.
One thing we've seen very much in the last 24 months on what we call the race to zero is that as the private sector starts to mobilise and be more ambitious, it emboldens the public sector, what we call the ambition loop. So I'm really hopeful that in this year in 2022 will be the year of the resilience ambition loop, where public sector and private sector are kind of egging each other on to raise standards of ambition on the road to resilience.
Flood Re is a unique institution. It was being created by government and insurance industry to improve the affordability and availability of flood cover to householders. So this is a world first. No one else has done this in this way. And what we've seen over the course of the last 5 or 6 years since we launched is 350,000 households benefiting from the help. And because it's a focus on flooding, we can then devote much more resource and time and thinking to some of the long-term challenges around flooding.
I've been a big champion of what I call radical collaboration in all my work on climate change. I think it's very difficult to do almost any of the systemic transformations we need without public, private, full value chain, investors, banks, local communities all collaborating. And one reason I'm so excited about Flood Re is that it represents a new paradigm in the way of thinking about the role of insurance. You know, not just covering next year's premium, but structurally building a more resilient infrastructure future.
Flood Re is a joint initiative between the UK government and the insurance industry, and we exist to make home insurance more affordable and more available for those people whose homes are at the very highest risk of flooding. And as a consequence, they pay cheaper premiums for the home insurance, So the vision for Flood Re, which we are achieving at the moment, is to make sure that home insurance continues to be affordable.
We've had the Flood Re scheme running since 2016, which was an enormous step forward compared to before that, when people simply, most of them couldn't get insurance if you were in a flood risk area. And that's why the scheme's so good, because now 95% of people can get a quote from 5 companies or more.
It exists only until 2039, and between now and then we're going to continue to work with the insurance industry and with others to help the market transition such that when we exit the market, as we will in 2039, that home insurance is still available and it's still affordable after our exit.
My hope would be that that innovation is something which resonates around the world and is picked up based on the UK's pioneering leadership in this place. Flood Re is a really good example of that collaboration between public and private and between all different actors, and also crucially an emphasis on a different approach to insurance, not just replacing damaged properties, but making sure that properties are built back in a more flood resilient way as we go forward.
We do need to think about the social value of flood risk-aware, resilient communities.
Knowing that you're secure against flood risk means that you can plan and invest for a more prosperous future. So in our communities that are at risk, this kind of more innovative approach to flood insurance is going to allow them to plan for a more prosperous economic future. Let's build back better.
Flood Re introduces a cross-subsidy in the insurance market so that those people who don't flood make a small contribution to those that do. But the real vision is that we take the 25 years that Flood Re exists and we use that time to make changes.
Build back better is a funny phrase, build back better, but is it literally? It does what it says on the tin.
Insurance companies should be embracing the Build Back Better scheme that Flood Re is putting in place.
Climate change is the new standard, so we need to make sure that the insurance industry responds with a new standard.
It will help their businesses, but perhaps most importantly, will help insurance companies' customers be ready for climate change.
The new standard for NFU Mutual is to promote resilience cover and include it within our home buildings policies. There's no opt-in or opt-out. It's something that we provide at no additional cost.
Our insurance bill after Storm Desmond was £48,000, and after we'd built back better, we put the resilience measures in. The next time we flooded, our insurance bill was £0.
And the aim is that insurance companies could offer up to £10,000 to a household to make their home more resilient. And I've seen some of these homes and some of the things that can be done, which is putting in tiles instead of carpets, plugs, higher up the walls.
The catalyst for joining the Build Back Better scheme was really threefold. One, we're living in a climate emergency as we speak. Our customers also experience that, and particularly those customers who experience flood. And thirdly, as an insurer, we really have to play our part in actually how we influence future development of property, homes, and protecting our customers moving forward.
As a mutual insurer, we don't answer to shareholders, which means that we can just focus on providing the best level and most comprehensive cover to our customers. Our customers stay with us for a long time, so those customers who benefit from having resilient measures will remain on cover with us.
I think the Build Back Better scheme will add to the customer experience in a number of ways. Firstly, I think it takes the insurer beyond just fixing that event, that moment in time, and actually helps to offer protection against future events. And secondly, I think it plays its part in the wider community and expectation that our customers will have around protecting the environment as we move through the coming years.
There are lots of features of Build Back Better that are obviously attractive to insurers. So having lower claims in future because we've got more resilient properties is clearly good business. I think having happier and more loyal customers is clearly good business. But there's another angle that is particularly relevant to my day job, which is to advise asset owners on where to invest. And across our firm, we advise hundreds of billions of pounds of assets. And one of the biggest shifts that we've seen over time is that those asset owners are much more focused on responsible investment, and they want to invest with firms and lend money to firms that genuinely care about financial sustainability. I think it's such an obvious and tangible social good.
Build Back Better supports our ESG agenda through a number of areas. Customers are increasingly aware of the importance that the environment plays in their world. We did some work recently with the Institute of Customer Services, and they reported that over 50% of customers will think around how the environmental impact of what an insurer does for them will influence their buying decision. Now, if we ignore that as an industry, we're ignoring our customers' demand, we're ignoring the demand that we see as consumers ourselves.
Success for us means that people don't need Flood Re. That would be success if people didn't need us. And what that means is that we're managing our flood risk. So that's about building defences.
And put simply, if it costs insurers less to settle a claim, then that should feed back into the price that our customers end up paying for the policy.
Build Back Better is vital.
We'll leave the market by 2039. The support that Flood Re provides on behalf of the insurance industry to keep premiums and excesses low will go. And what we want to do as Flood Re is to galvanise the debate to ensure that everyone who has a stake in reducing flooding does their bit, takes their action that they need in order to reduce the frequency and severity of floods affecting our homes.
If we pull together, we can really make a difference. So I'm really optimistic about the future because I know that if we work together as businesses, as homeowners, as government, we can make a difference.
It's obvious. We can build back better. We must build back better.
Let's 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 build back better.
We must build back better.
Let's build back better.